Hi, welcome to this Dronedesk user guide video covering managing auto-imported flight logs. So if you've set up your account to auto-import flight logs from AirData, then you'll at some point need to review the logs that have been imported and process them to make sure that they're associated with your jobs in the system. So if we have a look at a couple of jobs, I'm going to filter this down to Flight Cottage. So I know that there are some logs that have not yet been imported for these two jobs. So if I go down to post flight and look at the AirData manual logs, so there's nothing in there, nothing in the manual log either. And if I go to the AirData auto imported, you can see there's nothing there. If I go manage flights, there are no flights found within the data range for that job. Okay, so what will happen is overnight Dronedesk will access your AirData account and pull in the logs that it hasn't seen already and attempt to match them to the jobs that you've got in the system. And if it's able to do that, then you'll see those flights appear within the jobs. And there's a couple of ways in which you can manage the matching, so I'll cover that in a second. The primary way to review your flight logs that have come in is via Flight Log Admin, which you access via your profile and Flight Log Admin. So you can see at the moment there are no flights in. So what I'll do is I'll pause the recording for a minute, I'll process the import from AirData, and then I'll come back. Okay, so the import's run. If I refresh this page now, we should see some flights appear. There we go. Okay, so it looks like we've got 30 records imported, which is what I expected, so I limited the import to 30. And we can see we've got flights for the location or for the jobs that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so the import process has matched these flight logs to the job in the system by virtue of the fact that the flights and the jobs are on the same day and they are within 1 kilometer of the center of the job that you created in the system. You can see that as well as identifying the job, Dronedesk has matched the pilot and the drone. That will only happen if the pilot name is the same in Dronedesk as it is in AirData, and similarly if the drone name is the same in Dronedesk as it is in AirData. So if you find that none of your imports have matching drones or pilots, then it could be that you need to rename either in Dronedesk or in AirData the pilot or drone to make sure they match. I mean, it's no hardship if they don't. It just means that you have to assign them manually within Dronedesk otherwise. Okay, so you can see that the ones that have been matched are marked as review, so in yellow, and that's because the AirData logs don't contain any battery information. So the only essentially manual bit of work that you have to do for each of these records is to assign a battery, assuming everything else is correct, of course. So it's just a question of clicking review. It gives you a choice of other jobs in the system which are within kind of 7 days either side of the flight log. Just in case, for whatever reason, you've got multiple jobs on the same day or the same location, whatever, you have the opportunity to change the allocation here if you want to. But on this occasion, I know it's correct, so I'm going to click Next. You can see it brings up the pilot and drone, and all I need to do is select the battery. The battery 2 is for aircraft that are able to carry two batteries. Once I'm happy with that, click Tag. Flight is now successfully tagged to the job, and that is it, job done. Okay, so for the job on the 19th, I can go through and do the rest. Okay. And then the final one that is shown for review. So that's all those jobs for the 19th that are tagged. Now you'll notice that there's one job that's not tagged to a job. And the reason for that is there's 0 minute of flight shown in that log for whatever reason. It could be that it was an aborted takeoff, or it was just a short hover. For whatever reason, it took less than a minute for that flight from takeoff to landing. So Dronedesk by default will, or the import process rather, will ignore those jobs. So it'll mark it as ignored. You still have the opportunity if you want to assign that flight to a job, but otherwise if you just leave it as ignored, that flight won't be counted or included in any log reports. Okay, so that's my flights for the 19th all tagged. So if I go to jobs now, filter to my site, go to the job for the 19th. Which one was it? Sorry, that one. Go manage job, go down to post flight and look at my AirData auto imported. You'll see that all those flights are overlaid on the map and neatly assigned with the batteries I've assigned there. So that is it for that job. Your flights are now logged, mapped, and will be included in the flight log report whenever you run it. So if I go back to the top and go back to jobs, go back to flight and look at the job for the 18th. So this was the day before, and go to manage job. This is the alternate way to manage the assignments of the flight logs. So if I go into AirData Auto Imported, you'll see that this also has flights mapped, but they're at the moment unassigned in the sense that everything's filled in apart from the battery information. So you can see there was a large number of flights on this day. So rather than having to go through the tagging process on that other screen, then this gives you a slightly quicker way of managing the battery allocation for a large number. So you would just run through all of these and assign the batteries accordingly. The other option you have is via the Manage Flights option here. So if I click on that, what you'll see is all the flights that are candidates for this job. So again, everything that's on the same date within a kilometre of the job centre location. So you'll see all the flights here. There's 17 in total. There is one flight that has 0 minutes against it. You can choose to leave that with 0 minutes against it if you want and not assign it. So essentially that one is ignored, or you can include it. If you include it, then it will now appear in the list and you just need to assign a battery to it. And that's it. Your flights are now logged to that particular job. So if I now go to the flight log admin, you'll see that all those flights are tagged for the 18th and 19th, and I've yet to process the remaining flights which were outside of those dates for a separate job, which I haven't got in the system. The other thing I should mention here is that if there are flights here that you're not sure about, that don't look familiar, then you can always dive into AirData by clicking the link, and this will open the flight in AirData so you can review it to jog your memory if need be. So if I go to reports and flight logs now and filter down to that week in November, we can see that all the flights are included. You can see for the 19th we left that 0 minute flight as ignored, so that's not included in the report. But for the 18th we left one in that was 0 minutes, so that is shown in the report. So despite the fact that it's 0 minutes, it's still shown in there. Okay. There's a separate video to cover how to set yourself up with your AirData login to ensure that Dronedesk is able to retrieve your logs for you. What will happen is overnight Dronedesk will run generally. You'll get an email stating how many flights have been imported. It'll list the details, whether or not each flight was successful or unsuccessful in import. If there's an error, then it will give you a link to the job to review it in AirData. If you do get errors, there'll be a prompt there for you to send the log file across to us. It's really helpful if you can do that. Then we can review what happened and what went wrong, why we weren't able to import it. So hopefully we'll be able to fix it or build a workaround for it. But that is it. I think that just about covers everything you need to know about AirData Auto Flight Log imports in Dronedesk. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.